what days and months and times and years is he talking about? Because, my friends, in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, the same man who wrote this to the Galatians tells the Corinthians to keep Passover. 1 Corinthians 5:7, get rid of the old leaven, that you may be a new batch without leaven, as you really are. For Messiah, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. Therefore let us keep the festival, not with old yeast, yet the leaven, or the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with bread without leaven, the bread of sincerity and truth. But he says in verse 8, therefore let us keep the festival. Which festival? Passover. Because he just says, Messiah, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed for us, therefore let us keep the festival. So is this man telling one group of people, I'm worried for you because you're keeping times and seasons of Yahuwah, those which are not mighty ones? In other words, you are worshiping other gods. And how be it now that you know Yahuwah, or known of Yahuwah, how do you turn to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto you desire again to be in bondage? What bondage? The bondage of other mighty ones in context, and of other gods, as it says in context. Then he says, you observe days and months and times and years. I'm afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you your labor in vain. What days and months and times and years is he talking about? Because, my friends, in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, the same man who wrote this to the Galatians tells the Corinthians to keep Passover. 1 Corinthians 5:7, get rid of the old leaven, that you may be a new batch without leaven, as you really are. For Messiah, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. Therefore let us keep the festival, not with old yeast, yet or the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with bread without leaven, the bread of sincerity and truth. But he says in verse 8, therefore let us keep the festival. Which festival? Passover. Because he just says, Messiah, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed for us, therefore let us keep the festival. So is this man telling one group of people, I'm worried for you because you're keeping times and seasons of Yahuwah, and telling the other people, oh, you should keep the Passover of Yahuwah, which is a time and a season? No, it makes no sense, my friends. The only thing that makes sense is that he is agreeing with the book of Leviticus 19:26. It says, you shall not eat anything with the blood, neither shall you use enchantment, nor observe times. He puts enchantment and observing times together because it's essentially witchcraft, observing the times of the fallen gods, observing the times of those who are not mighty ones. And then in the same book, in Leviticus 23, he tells them all the holidays and all the holy days, rather, and the Sabbaths that they should keep. So is he saying not to keep times, or is he saying not to keep those times which involve enchantments and involve other gods? He says don't have anything to do with the other gods. In the Torah, he tells us, don't learn the way of the heathen and see the way that they worship their mighty ones, and then do likewise unto me, for it is an abomination to you. My friends, we've got to read the scriptures in context. We have got to get on track. And all right, now let's look at the ruling for the Gentiles in Acts 15. This is another great example. This actually is a good example that I want everybody to meditate on, because a lot of people are trying to push the Torah or the commandments before they're pushing Yahuwah and his Messiah Yahushua. And the first thing that we have to do is introduce people to Yahuwah and to his Mashiach Yahushua. Even in the Ten Commandments, the very first thing Yahuwah does is he says, I am Yahuwah, your mighty one. He introduces himself before he tells anybody to do anything. You got to know him before you tell people to do something else. But let's look at Acts 15:20. This is the ruling for what the Gentiles should begin with in their faith journey. It says, but what shall we write unto them that they abstain, it says, but that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood. Just as Yahuwah has already told us to do throughout the Torah. He tells us not to eat the things that are polluted to idols, and not to commit fornication, and not to eat those things which are strangled, and not to eat blood. And then in verse 21, this is what they say. For Moshe, or Moses, of old time, hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. This is in the New Testament. And he said they're saying, right when the Gentiles are beginning to come to faith, they're wondering, What should we make the Gentiles do? Should they be circumcised? And the answer is no. They start out first from abstaining from pollutions of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood, because Moses is preached in every city, being read in the synagogues on every Sabbath day. So in other words, that's another part of it. That they are required to stop eating all these things strangled in the blood and fornications and pollutions of idols, and they're to learn Moses on the Sabbath day. It's a progression, my friends. Everybody didn't have the scrolls back then. Everybody didn't have a Torah and the Nabim or the prophets. They didn't have these scrolls all around. They didn't have these scriptures. You couldn't just grab a scriptures and look through it and turn to whatever page and see what it said. My friends, you had to learn. And they said, we write unto them that they learn upon the Shabbat day. This is what the early believers said, my friends. You can't twist it to say something else, because that is exactly what it says. Now, let's turn to Yeshayahu, or Isaiah. Isaiah 66. Isaiah 66. And let's look at verse 22. This is a future context of something which has not yet taken place. For as the new heavens and the new earth that I make stand before me, declares Yahuwah. So we're talking about a time in the future, because look around you, the heaven and earth has not passed, the same one that it was when Yeshayahu was given this prophecy. For as the new heavens and new earth that I make stand before me, declares Yahuwah, so your seed and your name shall stand. And it shall be that from new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares Yahuwah. And they shall go forth and look upon the corpses of the men who have transgressed against me, for the worm shall not die, and the fire not be quenched, and they shall be repulsive to all flesh. So from new moon to new moon, when he creates the new heavens and new earth, we're going to still be keeping Sabbath. Because it says from new moon to new moon and Sabbath to Sabbath, we're going to come to worship before him, and we're going to look upon the ones who transgressed his covenant, whose worm does not die and fire is not quenched. Now let's look at Revelation 14, because this gives us an idea. See, people preached, Yahushua made a statement. He said, come unto me, all you who are weak and heavy laden, meek and heavy laden. Come unto me, and I will give you rest for your souls. And people say, oh, see, Yahushua is saying, come unto me, and he'll be your Sabbath. Let him be your Sabbath. Yes, yes, he is saying that. But what in what context? In the context of what we just read in Yeshayahu 66. We're going to parallel. Remember what it said. New moon and new moon, Sabbath to Sabbath. We're going to come before Yahuwah to worship him, and we're going to look upon those who transgressed the covenant, who are going to burn. And we look at Revelation 14, verse 8 through 13. And another messenger followed, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of whoring. And a third messenger followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast in his image and receives his mark upon his forehead or upon his hand, he also shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Elohim, which is poured out undiluted into the cup of his wrath. And he shall be tortured with fire and sulfur before the set-apart messengers and before the Lamb. And the smoke of the torture goes up forever and ever. And they have no rest day or night, those worshiping the beast in his image. Also, if anyone receives the mark of his name. Here is the endurance of the set-apart ones. Here are those guarding the commandments of Elohim and the belief of Yahushua. Okay, right here he tells us many interesting things. He says, those who take the mark of the beast and worship the beast in the image of his name, which most people don't even know what the beast is. But if they do this, they will have no rest day nor night, and that their smoke of their torture goes up forever, that they will burn with fire and sulfur. So on one side, if we parallel this with Yeshayahu 66, we see that in new heavens, new earth, those who are saved and redeemed will come before Yahuwah from Sabbath to Sabbath, new moon to new moon, to worship before him and look upon those who are burning, which we see in Revelation 14 are those who took the mark and those who worship the beast. And we see that this even parallels together right here. So on one side of the gulf you have those who are keeping the Sabbath, who have inherited the Sabbath of the world to come. But on the other side of the gulf, you have those who have no rest day nor night. They have no Sabbath day nor night. They never have a Sabbath. It is not given to them to have, my friends.